Welcome, everybody. This is Lee, host of Lee Yang's podcast. I am back with two guests. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany. I'm actually Lee's niece.
And I am Sue. I am Tiffany's husband and
Brother-in-law,
I'm a Val.
Sorry, not brother-in-law.
It's okay. Val, and I was going to explain to our audience, because obviously some of our audience are not Hmong.
Oh.
So, because I have to leave some of her friends listening from work or people that just kind of find the channel. So Val means son-in-law, so for anybody that's listening that doesn't know what Val means, and I'm going to use that term throughout this podcast. Val means son-in-law, even though he's not my son-in-law. It's just, it gets complicated, I know, but we'll go into that cultural stuff maybe at a later time. Thank you for coming. You guys excited?
Yes. The first time we are on actually, you know what? I lied. We were talking before the podcast that this is our first time on a podcast, but we've actually been on a podcast before. Do you remember? So it was probably 3 years ago. We were on a podcast talking about our marriage and our relationship for a podcast. I think it's called Love Intently.
Are they still around?
I think they're still around.
Is it a Hmong one or?
No, it's another Asian woman who does it.
Oh.
But she found me on Instagram because my Instagram channel was primarily talking about like marriage for young married couples. And so she found me and asked me and Sue if we'd be willing to be on the podcast. And so we decided to be on the podcast, and we just talked about our marriage and just lessons that we've been learning, to kind of help, their listeners.
Other people out there. Okay. We'll get back to that because I do want to talk about that.
Okay.
First, before we move on, I want to ask, okay, how was it last night?
I think you need to give your listeners a little bit more context about what we're talking about.
Last night we had a little family gathering / meeting / conversation with some of my brothers and my sister-in-law, and then some of the nieces and nephews. And we had a blast last night. I wish we would have had more people here last night, though, to be honest. But we didn't. Obviously, we got what we got. So did you guys enjoy last night, though?
I thought it went well.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't know. I kind of knew what to expect, but I didn't know kind of the depth of the conversations that were going to happen, or who was going to talk, or if it was even going to be enough time for us to talk about everything. But I think the way that you and I kind of facilitated it ended up working really well, I feel. And we got voices from people who typically don't share or don't talk as much. And I think the people who do talk a lot try to not talk and take up so much space.
What was that rule that you put up there?
Step up and step back. So
Okay.
For people who don't usually talk as much, we ask them to step up and to share. And for people who know that they tend to talk a lot, we ask them to step back to allow that space for other people to be able to talk to.
Yeah. And you've done this. You're paid to do some of these things.
I am.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's something that it's not like a full-time job, but I am a trained facilitator. I'm working on getting certified. It's just taking me a few steps and everything.
Okay.
Because, once you become certified, it's like really official to people. But I'm a trained facilitator.
Okay.
And so a lot of the methods that I use are to really help bring out conversation, to bring out consensus, to really navigate and guide a conversation. Because you and I, we can just have a regular conversation, be really casual, right? But if you want to have a conversation with purpose, or if you have a focus for a meeting or for a gathering, you want to make sure that there's like a guideline or a focus or something around it to help you get to the point of what you're trying to achieve in the meeting. And so yesterday, my focus in approaching, how we were facilitating was really around a focused conversation. That's what we call it. And so there's certain questions that you can ask your audience or ask the group in order to really elicit the kinds of responses that will lead to the purpose or the intention or the action that you need the group to come to.
Can you do that one-on-one? Like if we're having a conversation now?
She uses it on me a lot.
When I first learned
Is it because you don't talk or you don't share much?
I'm not too much of a talker. So to get, some information out of me, she kind of facilitates me sometimes.
It's inclusive. It's a very inclusive process. So it's meant to be for people who are quiet. It's meant to be for people who talk a lot. There's a way that you can guide the conversations as a facilitator to be able to get everybody's responses out. And so I had no idea what facilitation was, right? I just thought that, people who lead conversations or who are leaders, like they just, ask questions and just get a conversation going, right? But there's actually an art to facilitation and like a guideline and a way that you go about it to really get the feedback and have a meaningful conversation with purpose and intention. And so, yes, when I was first going through training and everything, sometimes I would, facilitate my husband in conversations.
Were you practicing on him? Were you the guinea pig, Val?
I was.
He was, and I don't think sometimes he knew he was, but then that was a way for me to practice.
You didn't know that you were, huh?
But
I
there's
did.
really like intention behind it too,
Yeah.
around like the questions that you kind of ask. Because if you just like you talk to your spouse, you talk to people, you just say, how was your day, or how was work today, or like, it's very like cookie cutter, very generic, the kinds of things you ask. And then people just give a response, good, it was okay, very simple. But if you want to get a deeper response with more meaning and intention behind it, you have to ask the right questions.
You know what? Now that you said that, whenever we talk, I'm going to be like, Tiffany, stop facilitating me, all right? I'm going to feel as if you're facilitating my conversation or our conversation. I'm just kidding, though.
Okay, so I will say that sometimes I do it like unintentionally. It's really just because I've learned how to do these kinds of like, the skills to do that I feel like I have so many more meaningful conversations with people, and that I can get people to share more than just the generic, cookie cutter responses.
I would agree, because last night we had Isaac sharing, and it blew my mind, because I did not expect Isaac to say anything. Let's go back to our family event last night, right? Because obviously we didn't know how it's going to turn out. I didn't even know how it's going to turn out. I knew in my head roughly of how it's going to be, and I kind of gave you an idea of what I think it should be.
Yeah.
But the outcome of it was more than what I expected. For those that are listening, and you too can chime in, for those that are listening, if you have not gotten a chance to do a family gathering, a family conversation, regardless if it's your immediate family or extended family, because in my family, there's 9 of us, and I think 6 or 7 showed up last? No, 6 showed up, right? Because they for whatever reason, they decided not to come. So it was kind of a large group, not as large as it is for Hmong families. I think Hmong families could be pretty large too, but it was a large group, and I think whoever's listening, and if you haven't already, they should try it, don't you think? Having these family meeting and family conversation or whatever it is. I mean, they don't need to facilitate, but just get together, do something.
Just, get together, talk, because, that's one thing that draws us closer as family. And it's not just Hmong families, it's like any family.
Correct.
You want to be able to have intentional time to spend together and to, deepen your relationships with each other. And for us, because, we live in Minnesota, and so we don't get to see our Milwaukee family so often. The last time we were in Milwaukee was probably last July after family camp.
Oh, yes.
And so it's been like half a year since we got to see a lot of people in person. And so having that gathering last night to see some of the aunts and uncles was really like, I haven't seen some of them in like years,
Yeah.
And every time we do come to Milwaukee to visit, it's just for the weekend, and it's so short. We don't get to see everybody. And so having family gatherings like that, especially for people who live far away, is so meaningful. And like, I don't know if you knew, but man, I almost cried. Well, I cried when we were playing the game because I was laughing so much.
Yeah.
But like, I almost cried during
the one that Val answered the question correctly. I know you were crying. I'm like, wow.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we were playing telephone charades, and Uncle Lee's son had to act out a pregnant woman. And okay, I'm sorry, Tristan, but I thought that the team was doomed from the beginning. I thought they were doomed from the beginning, but somehow through playing telephone charades, Sue was able to guess a pregnant person, and I was just in disbelief. I was laughing so much, and I was so much in disbelief that I started crying.
Well, what was going in your head? Because you went from Kobe to my brother
to dad to
being
pregnant
a pregnant woman.
Yeah, because I was assuming that someone was gonna mess up already, and so because we were the 3rd group to go, and so we had like I was trying to learn from the examples that they were. The mistakes that they were making, and so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was just trying to make sure that I was trying to get the gesture right, and I was going through my head was like I was just trying to figure out why they were using that gesture for us, and so
Pregnant woman.
He's just a
Yeah,
good
pregnant.
guesser.
Yeah.
He's a good guesser.
I'm going to take you gambling with me, man.
Yeah, we should.
Oh, not that gambling's a good thing. Okay, I'm just saying for fun. All right, family. I mean, this podcast is mainly about family. And everybody that comes in, we talk a little bit about other stuff, but we talk about family too.
Mm-hmm.
And last night was a perfect example of what this podcast is about and the things that we share, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that being said, I'm not sure if you two want to jump into your family and where are you two at with having a family? Because I know you have a YouTube page, and I can, if you're okay with it, I can link it at the bottom of the description, along with anything that you have going on. But how's it going?
Yeah. So we've been married going on 6 years, and I think it was maybe 2 years into our marriage. That's when we decided that we wanted to start to try to have a family. But we've been unfortunately struggling to start and have our own family for the past going on 4 years now. So I have a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so it's something that causes, like cysts, or not cysts, but I think it's kind of like cysts around my.
I think it's a buildup of fatty cells around the ovaries.
Yeah, but it's a condition where basically, I don't ovulate every month. And so if when you want to have a family, start a family, and part of, start having a family is being able to ovulate so that, you can basically have a baby and, the whole medical process. We can go into that, and everybody can do their own research to know what that is. But basically that's something that I have, and it's been causing us to struggle a little bit in having our family. So I've actually had 3 miscarriages. I don't know if you knew that.
I knew of a few. I didn't know how many because
Yeah.
I'll hear it from your mom or from your sisters.
Well, I had my first miscarriage was back in 2018.
Okay.
And all of my miscarriages, they've been pretty like early on. And so my first miscarriage was back in 2018, and then last year I had 2 miscarriages.
So how early? Like, were you like a few months into it, or a few weeks into it?
Maybe like 4 or 5 weeks into 3 to 5, between 3 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So for none of my miscarriages, like they were close to the point where the egg or the fetus, the zygote, however the medical term is, close to developing a heartbeat. So none of my pregnancies had developed to the point where, the baby was even able to develop a heartbeat yet. So it was very, very early on, all of my miscarriages. So they call them, like my 2 miscarriages last year, they were chemical pregnancies. So basically there was just something wrong with like the genetics or the makeup of, when the, sperm met the egg and everything. And so my body just decided to reject the pregnancy because it knew that it wasn't going to, become a baby or anything like that. And so all of my miscarriages have been really early on in those cases. And, it's hard. And I try not to, feel like, I try not to think too, I don't know, I guess I try not to be so stressed or try not to make it mean something about, my inability to be a mom or to, give Sue kids and everything. But I think it's something also I feel that is becoming a lot more common with people my age and in our generation, especially as a lot of us are getting married later in life. And I don't know if it's genetics. I don't know if it's the foods that we eat, if it's like the working environments that we're in. But I mean, I know that in this, in this country, a lot of people, it's very common for people to get married like later in their 20s or even the 30s, right? But I feel like biologically our bodies are primed to have kids at a younger age. And when we delay that, there could be complications. There could be struggles in trying to start your family.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Oh, how old were you when you started?
Yeah, so I was 26
Okay.
when I had our first miscarriage, and I'm 30 now. So
when I used to work with kids with disability up in La Crosse, and one of the things they tell me is that as you get older, you have a higher chance of having a child with disability. So if you're in your 30s or 40s having kids, you have a higher chance. Is that because biologically your body, there's something going on with a woman's body, I'm assuming?
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I know that as you're getting older, I mean, like women, we're born with all of the eggs that we're ever going to have to be able to bear children, right? Whereas like men, they continue to develop sperm. So men can have kids at any age.
Correct.
Women, we are like, our eggs are, we're losing eggs every single month, right? And so we're limited with the number of eggs we have and the chances that we're able to really, get pregnant and to have kids. And so as you're getting older, because our bodies are changing, I mean, I'm assuming this is for everybody, the chances of you being able to have kids or, being in a condition where your body is healthy enough to bear children, it just starts to go down a little bit. And I feel like now that I'm in my 30s, I'm really worried and concerned, and it makes me think about it a lot more, like, oh man, like what if we really aren't able to ever have any kids, because we've been trying for 4 years now. And, when you're in your mid 20s and everything, you're like, oh, well, I still have time. And, I know that it'll all happen in God's timing, and, it'll, maybe just a few more years it'll happen. And then now I'm in my 30s. I'm like,
you're getting a little worried now.
I'm like, I feel like I'm at like my halfway point. And I mean, I know that, there's women who will have babies when they're in their 40s too. But, there are higher chances of complications.
Yeah. So let's backtrack. When you had your first miscarriage, and then obviously last year you had two, how was it emotionally? I mean, as a guy, or as a husband, Auntie and I, we haven't had any. I would assume it'll be devastating. If you want to share it, then Val, I need you to share also, because I don't obviously as the husband, you want to be supportive. So how was it? I mean, I don't want to resurface any old like emotions.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I am completely open to talking about it because, honestly, for all three of my miscarriages, I would not have known I was having a miscarriage if I didn't take a pregnancy test, because it just felt like I was on my period. And it honestly just felt like I was on my period. Unless I took a pregnancy test beforehand to see if I was pregnant or not, I would not have known for all three of them, which sometimes makes me think like, well, how many other miscarriages maybe did I miss or that I did not know that I was having in the past? How many more of those could there have been? But I mean, the first one, it hit really hard because, your first time you finding out that you're pregnant, and then
you're excited.
You're getting excited. And then all of a sudden, you're not, like your bleeding is not stopping, and you start to get concerned and you're wondering, like, is everything okay? And then, we found out that I was having a miscarriage. And so it was devastating. And it was like really an emotionally hard time, because around that time too, when I had the miscarriage, was when Grandma passed away.
Oh no. No way.
Yeah. It was literally, okay, I don't want to get too emotional and cry about it, but literally I remember when Grandma was at the hospital, and everybody would go to the hospital to go see her, and there's like that piece, that garden or something at the hospital, and everybody was there. And I think that's when they had rolled Grandma out to the garden.
Yes.
Just because change of scenery for her.
Is that when we all went as a family and we stayed there, we took pictures, and we kind of prayed for her?
Yeah. Yep. And then I was FaceTiming my mom, and I had found out maybe like 2 or 3 days before that I was pregnant. And, Grandma's in the hospital. I wanted to like be there to tell her that I was pregnant. And so I was FaceTiming her, and, she wasn't so responsive. She was like watching and everything on the phone. And I told her that, Grandma, you can't go yet because I just found out that I'm pregnant. And I don't think anybody heard me say that, because I was literally just with Grandma on the phone. Yeah, by herself. And so I was telling her that I'm pregnant and you can't go yet. And then, a few days later, actually, I think I found out that I had a miscarriage first before she passed away.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had found out I had the miscarriage. And then a few days later, that's when Grandma passed away too.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my goodness.
When
I think back on it, I'm like, man, like there was just so much emotionally going on for me during that time, because I didn't just lose my grandma. I lost my baby,
Within like a few days?
Within a few days.
Oh my goodness, yeah. You doing okay?
The thing that just made me a little bit more emotional is more so grandma. I mean, talking about the miscarriages, I feel like I've cried so much about all of those, but then just talking about grandma, it makes me cry.
Yeah.
So.
How about you, Val? How was it for you, like the first or second or third time? I know it's a little bit difficult for us men because obviously we're not going through it biologically and we don't have the hormones or we're not, whatever it is,
Yeah.
So how was it for you?
Well, for me, I just felt like I didn't really feel any emotions towards the miscarriage until maybe like a month later. Because when she got pregnant, like she said, we got excited. We started buying like, baby clothes, baby shoes and everything. And then it wasn't until a month later when all that happened, when it finally hit me, when I walked into the room and I saw, the baby shoes again. And at that point I was just like, we could have had a baby, and so that's when I just broke down and started crying to Tiff. And, but, and just to backtrack too, as if like, there was no responsibility on my part, but I wanted to say that we did get me tested too, just to eliminate all the possibilities. And turns out that I guess I was okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's just me.
No, it's not. It's we're in this together. Yeah, that's basically how I felt.
Yeah, and it's okay. I want to touch upon this male side, this the men's side, the husband side, right? Mm-hmm. It's okay to cry.
Yeah,
right. It's okay to feel emotion. It's okay to go through these things. I say that because I'm not sure how many of the guys are listening are like, you know what, brush it off, But to some extent, we're hurting also, and I know that there's guys out there that might not show it, but I'm sure deep down inside they feel bad, especially looking at your spouse, right? Looking at your wife and knowing that she went through what she went through.
Yeah. And I really feel, and I have to say this too, like I feel really fortunate and blessed that Xue isn't the type of person who like blamed me for anything. Like as soon as I had the miscarriage, he never once said to me like, oh, well, you should have been more careful, or you should have did this, yes. Or, you're not healthy, or it was your fault. Like he never put any blame on me. And, my in-laws and my family, they never put any blame on me. And I know that I'm really lucky because of that, because a lot of women are unfortunately the victim of that. Or can be the victim of that as well too. And so I feel very fortunate. I'm very thankful that, Xue isn't that type of person, and neither is his family, or neither is my family, in being quick to point blame as to like whose fault it is. Because I think that, a lot of times when bad things happen, especially when sensitive things around, pregnancies and miscarriages happen, everyone's so quick to point fingers and be like, well, whose fault was it? Because it's just easier to blame somebody or something. But in our cases, in all three of our miscarriages, Xue's never said anything like that to me, and in our families, nobody has ever said anything like that.
That is a very good point, Tiffany, because you're right. Our words that we use might not come off as the intention as what we thought, but the other person that's listening, that's receiving it, takes it a little different. So even though, let's say I say what I say in good faith, but obviously we have to be careful in how we say those. Yeah. We have to be careful on how we word it also, and I would definitely agree, because I know there are some parents, I'm sure it's not cultural, but some parents, older parents might be less sensitive, and they'll just say, oh, you'll get over it, or this and that, I can hear like grandma or grandpa, or not ours, but just grandparents in general,
And I understand that it's because, they don't know, they may not know like the biology of it. So it's harder for them to understand, and for us to explain like the biology. Like it's hard for me to explain my condition to older adults and older Hmong, relatives who don't know like on a biological level what that means. And so they just know that, I can't get pregnant, or that I'm not able to, keep a pregnancy and everything. But going back to what you're saying too about, being careful about the things that you say, I don't mind if people ask and everything. I know that for some people it can be really sensitive, the way you ask questions for people who are trying to get pregnant and who are struggling, because there's a lot of people who are trying, but they just don't show it, or they're they're not vocal about it. They're not telling everybody and telling the world that they're struggling, right? I think one example that I just remember people saying to me that it was, it's a little bit hurtful, but there's some women who were older than me, right? And they've also been really struggling to have families and to start their own, to have kids and everything. And they'll say things to me like, oh, you're still young, like you still have opportunities, you still have chances. They're older, they're in like their late 30s and getting into their 40s. And they'll say things to me like that, like, oh, you're still young and you're still, you still have opportunities, at least you're still young, even if, these ladies, they have been struggling too. And I tell myself, and I think in my head, and I don't want to say it to them, but this is for all people who may be listening. If you're somebody who's older, who's struggling, and you tell somebody younger who's also struggling, you're still young, ask yourself, would you have told yourself that when you were my age? Because, if you're a 35, 36, 37-year-old woman who's still struggling to get pregnant, and you tell me, a 30-year-old woman, that I'm still young and that I still have a chance, would you have told yourself that? Because I'm you right now, and I could be you still in 8
7
years.
years or 7
Yes.
years, yeah.
And the things that you're saying to me just because I'm younger than you and that I still have chance, that has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. And so I think just being, instead of asking people, are you guys going to have kids? Or, why aren't you guys thinking about children yet? Or, what's wrong? Maybe just ask, like, how are you doing? Like, are you happy right now? Simple questions that don't have to directly correlate with pregnancy or with kids, because
that's a sensitive topic for them.
Yeah, it can be.
I would agree. I would definitely agree, because to be honest, I used to be like that until I start realizing that some of the questions I ask can be very hurtful without knowing. Like, for example, right? So-and-so have been married for, I don't know, let's say 7, 8 years, right?
Yeah.
And obviously I don't know the story, but I'll go up to them and say, oh my, come on, man. How come you're not having kids yet? Well, you know what? Maybe the backstory is that I didn't know they've been trying. Yeah. I didn't know that they lost 2 or 3 or 4 kids already, you know? And so you're right. The approach that we as husband or grandparents or older adults approaching younger, or even older parents or older couples are trying to have kids, just be careful on what you say, because, maybe they are trying, maybe they're just not sharing it with you. Yeah. Agree, right?
Yeah. And I think the majority of couples are, for us, we know that not everybody knows that we've had miscarriages, right? And we know that people don't know that we're struggling. So we extend a lot of grace to people, because we know that they don't know, and we don't hold that against them. But, there comes a point too for our own mental kind of sanity where we're just tired and exhausted of people asking us or giving the same answer all the time.
Especially if one person asks, another person asks at the same event, or let's say you go to church and then you have all the church members ask and you're repeating the same questions. One of the things I know, one of the things that I have, you have a cousin, right? Who is single. I'm not going to name names. That's one thing that, Auntie and I, we decide not to drop too many names.
Don't say if this person is a boy or girl either. Just say this person.
This person, you're right. Sometimes, and if it is, then I'll cut it out. But we always tell this person, how come you haven't found anybody? Yep. You haven't found anybody. You haven't found anybody. You haven't found anybody. And after a while, I realized, you know what? We just become a broken record to this person. And we just
maybe pushes them away from wanting to talk to you. Because
Correct.
The only thing you're going to ask them is, why haven't they found
Correct.
anybody?
And so I realized that. And so if you know who you are, I'm sorry, okay? Okay, Uncle Lee is sorry. I apologize on behalf of all the aunties and uncles. But that is true. Like, the words we use, we have to be a bit more careful. And I'm not saying that, we have to be super sensitive about it, but you just have to be more mindful, So with that being said, what's the plan? Are you guys trying? Are you guys doing?
To still try. I don't think that we're ever going to stop until
it happens. If it happens,
actually just can't anymore. Yeah.
So are you guys taking a medical approach? If you have all the money in the world, you can do whatever you need to have a baby, right? Is that how that works?
If you can afford it, and if that's the route you want to go, we tried the medical route. We tried the herbal route. We tried a lot of things. And I think right now our focus is still on wanting to start a family and trying to have kids, but we do also have other things that we're trying to focus on right now too in our lives. And so I think we're not ignoring, and we're not like not trying, but we're just waiting and seeing if it'll happen all in God's timing, and praying about it, trying to just keep ourselves healthy. And I don't know what else to say, but we're always we're continuously trying. So it's not because of a lack of effort.
So whoever's listening that is going through it, right? Mm-hmm. Don't quit is what you're saying, basically, right? If you want that, if that's something that your heart desires, keep trying it. Just do whatever you can. If you have the financial means to do it, do it. If you don't,
yeah.
I mean,
but I will say this too, like for anybody, for people who are listening, don't feel, I mean, again, I'm not a mom yet and I haven't had any kids, but don't feel like having kids will solve any issues either.
Like within the marriage.
Within the marriage or just in life. Because sometimes, like, when we were early on in our marriage and we were, struggling and everything, I'm just like, man, I wish I would just have I wish I had like a kid or a child that I could, give my attention to, or who would love me or give me attention, or just to be with, because sometimes it was just, I didn't want to be around Sue, And so like sometimes, like I feel like, you could probably, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, Lee, but like sometimes kids are more of an escape from your spouse, or can be an escape from your spouse, or a distraction in some way. But, I also don't want to feel like once we have kids, like everything will be better too. Like in our, whether it's in our marriage, whether it's in our life situations or anything like that, I don't want to feel like having kids for us is going to be the solution to that, because I know it's not. Like if we have problems right now, whether it's in our marriage, whether it's at work, whether it's in life, those problems are still going to exist. We're just going to have, kids added onto that, and, issues and problems that, challenges, not problems, challenges that come with having kids too. So it's never, you're really only ever trading one set of challenges for another in life. And so I just don't want kids, for me, to be like a solution to all of our problems, or like our lives will be more meaningful if we had kids, because we still have purpose. We still have meaning behind our marriage and who we are as individuals. And if we have kids, that'll just be an extra blessing. And if not, we can still be very happy with who and where we are.
I'm glad that you brought up marriage, right? Because earlier, like in the beginning of the podcast, you talked about you did a podcast with you guys did another podcast regarding your marriage, right? So let's talk about that for listeners. You used to, are you still doing no? Okay.
No, sorry. I'm kind of shaking my head. Not really.
Okay.
I feel like that was something I wanted to do in the beginning. I had started like doing a little bit more social media and a website around supporting newlywed couples in their marriage life and their relationships. And it was something that I was really feeling really passionate about in the beginning, but I realized, and, just talking with Sue a lot about it, that it's a little bit of a difficult space to be in, because, we've only been married for 6 years. I feel like at the time I didn't feel like we were in I guess I'll just say that Sue convinced me of thinking, we don't have that many years of marriage experience. Who are we to be giving advice to other people? Which is like, yeah, that's true. But in my mind, I was like, but other people are struggling with this right now, and I'm struggling with this right now, and I would like to be a part of a community of people who can support each other. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 50-year-old marriage, giving advice to us. I mean, there's definitely value in that, but there's also value in being around people who are, 3 or 4 years into their marriage too, and learning from them. Everybody has something to share and lessons to teach about things that they've learned in their marriage, no matter how long they've been married.
I would agree, because the fact that there are older parents, older couples like Auntie and I, there's some things that we haven't learned yet, to be honest. Yeah. Because maybe our mindsets, because maybe we're a different generation, right? We kind of talked about that last night during our family, and so just to see a perspective from a younger generation and their marriage and how they deal with things. Not to say that what you're going to say is going to change my marriage, but I'm hoping that we can get something out of it. Yeah. Because everything that we watch, everything that we learn, everything that we read, it's up to us to take and apply that. So no matter what information or what advice you share, it's still up to me and auntie to take that and apply it. But I think it's still good to get out there and share that information. So, but right now, right, you guys are how many years into your marriage?
Going on 6.
Going on 6 years, right? Yep. Everything's going fine and dandy?
Fine and dandy. For the most part, yeah. I mean, everything is great. I mean, because I feel like I've been talking too much. I'll let Sue talk first.
The reason why I say this is this. Because auntie and I, we get into it sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. We do. Not every marriage is perfect. Mm-hmm. You're going to have your struggles. You're going to have your disagreements. And at the end, you have to learn how to communicate, mm-hmm. right? And so, I want to see, and you guys are the first couple that I have on the podcast. And so I want to ask you too, how do you communicate through those struggles, through those arguments, through those disappointments, through whatever it is? Mm-hmm. Because I have my way. Auntie and I, we have our way of doing it. I want to know how you guys deal with the, the whatever it is, the argument or whatever.
Yeah, I guess I can take on this. With me being the one who communicates less in our relationship, I think it was important for me to figure out that I need to, express my emotions at the time to Tiff, and so whenever we would have like some sort of an argument, I would try to let her know that, hey, I don't feel like talking to about this situation or the subject right now. Could we talk about it later? So I let her know how I feel at the moment and set an expectation for her, and so I guess that's my take on it.
So you're an internal processor and I'm an external processor.
Yes.
And Sue comes from a background where they don't really express things and talk about things a lot. Whereas our family, we talk about everything.
Well, depends because
we don't talk about everything.
Some of the uncles, they don't share much. Mm-hmm. They share in private, but I'm not sure how they are within their own marriage.
In my immediate family, we are talkers. We will talk over each other. We will talk to clarify points. We don't process things internally. We process things by talking about it, right? And for Sue, that was really overwhelming for him, coming from a background where he's very much an internal processor, very much like an introverted kind of he takes his time to think about things. But he's a person who doesn't say much, but the things that he says are very profound or they're very meaningful. They're very deep. Whereas for me, I can ramble on and on to try to explain a very simple point that he could explain in 2 sentences. And so it was very difficult for us to understand those different kind of communication styles because I would try to beat things out of him, but he's just why are you trying to attack me?
Mm-hmm.
Give me a minute here.
Yeah. The issue that I found between our communication styles is that, whenever I don't speak much, right? But when I do, she asks me questions in between, me explaining my emotions to her. And so I feel like that's, I'm trying to explain my emotions to you and you're interrupting me every time but I start to realize that maybe that's just how she processes things too. And so I try to give her the grace, into her interrupting me, but I do remind her sometimes of
just
let me explain myself.
Can I finish? Yeah. Can I finish first? Well, in my defense, I interrupt to clarify, but sometimes I interrupt when I shouldn't be interrupting because I'm he's getting to the point. I just need to be patient and listen.
Yeah, and oftentimes I lose my chain of thought too. And so it's just
you're not the only one, man. I do that too.
Yeah.
Well,
But I was gonna say, guys in general, right? Mm-hmm. Guys in general, we're not talkers. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's my opinion. I all the guys I know. Shoot, forget it, man. You're gonna tell them to share their emotion. It's not gonna happen. At least us 2 guys, right? I mean, mm-hmm. But their spouse is a different story. Yeah. But to share your emotion or to share your thoughts or to share your frustration with your spouse is gonna be a process that they've never gone through because, like you said, I never had that in my head of how to say things to my wife, to auntie, right? Mm-hmm. So I had to learn that during my marriage and how to, I have to be quiet. I have to listen. Mm-hmm. I can't, one thing that guys, we always do, we always try to solve their problem.
Yep.
You know what? They don't need
Yep.
They don't need the problem solved. You know what they need to do?
They just
They
need
don't-
someone to listen.
They just need you to listen. Guys,
Okay,
if you're
one
out
of
there, guys, if you're listening, just listen, man. Just listen to what she has to say, okay? Maybe that's all she needs.
Here's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard about communication. This not just for marriage, but just in general, okay? Listen, okay, when you're responding, you want to respond to emotion with emotion and fact with fact. If the person you're communicating with, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your child, whether it's your friend or coworker, whoever, if they're talking to you from an emotional place, then just respond back with emotion to that, because they're not looking for you to solve any issues. They just want to know that someone is listening. But when they are asking and talking to you for like advice, or like they're looking for clarity, or they're looking for some sort of action, or for you to help them, that's where it's appropriate for you to go in and try to solve the issue or to respond to it in a way. Because, man, I remember coming home from work some days and I was so like stressed, and I would just tell Sue like how, how I was feeling and how I had so much work, or, how some people were making me feel. And then I remember one time he's like, well, if you don't feel like you're being valued, then maybe you should just quit your job, or like, maybe you should,
Really? I said
yeah,
that?
you did. You're like, maybe
That was your solution,
maybe
right?
you should, maybe you should start looking for other places if you don't feel, valued or anything. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, I'm not going to quit my job. I just had one bad day. That doesn't mean that my job is terrible, or, it doesn't mean that like I hate where I work. I was just having a stressful day. And his mind automatically went to, well, if this is a problem that you're having, here's a solution. But in my mind, I'm like, I just want you to be like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry you had a stressful day.
And that's it, huh?
Or, yeah, or like, oh, I'm so sorry, tomorrow, hopefully it'll be a better day, or, just, maybe let's go out and go get dinner and just get your mind off of things. That's all I needed. But he went automatically to the well, if it's not working, maybe you need to find someplace else. And
and for guys, okay, and actually, I mean, this is us responding to our spouse or our girlfriend or our significant other. I think for spouses, girlfriends, to respond to guys is that sometimes you just have, like what you said, Val, just let us think through it, because we're not going to give you an answer right away, because it's our thought process is just a little slower, because I would like to say, here's the thing. I'm not sure about you, Val, but I think things through logically, right? Yeah. I don't think things through with my emotions, because if I do, then I would say something stupid that would get me in trouble. Exactly. All right? Okay, guys, if you're listening, think through it logically and take your time and choose your words correctly, because if you say things out of emotions, then you're going to say something stupid, and then you're going to get into more trouble, right? So I would just say that girlfriends, wives, if you're out there, just let the guy kind of think through it, okay? But here's the thing. Sometimes we think through it, and then the spouse or the girlfriend is like, wait, it's been an hour or 2 hours. It's been a few days. So what is it, right? And so sometimes you're not going to get anything. Sometimes the person or the guy isn't going to be the one that's going to respond. He's like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go fishing. I'm going to do my own thing. But I have to say, if he is respectful enough, he will at least respond and say, honey, give me some time to think about it, all right? Or something.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, like for me, I'm pretty level-headed, and I like to keep my mind at ease and at peace at all times. And when she comes in the room with being an emotional hurricane, it takes me some time to just be like, oh, hold on, like,
what's going on?
Like I'm just like trying to understand her at this time. And so yes, I've made the mistakes of acting too rationally or like too logically. And, I have learned that, when she comes in like an emotional hurricane, just affirm her emotions first. You're like, yeah, I understand that you feel that way. And, I sympathize with you. And like, just using those techniques, it definitely calms her down.
The other thing too is like more than half of the time, all we need is a hug. Literally, all we need is someone to just I just need him to like hug me, to like calm me down. If I'm like stressed about something, I'm just like, and I've learned and I've gotten better at communicating with that to him too.
Because it goes both ways, doesn't it? Yes.
Right. So like if I'm having a stressful day and like Sue's just like, well, you know what can I do? And I'm like, honey, I just need a hug right now. Like, and honestly, like, I don't know, that maybe sound cheesy and everything, but I'm sure there are plenty of women out there who can relate that. Sometimes all we need is a hug, or all we need is to just for someone to just come and like make us feel like everything's going to be okay.
You know,
And it doesn't have to be verbal. It really can be, something physical like that too. That means a lot.
for guys, it's total opposite. It's like,
leave me alone. Don't touch me.
Seriously, leave me alone. Like, I'm frustrated or something's happened at work or whatever.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk about it. Just leave me alone. I'm going to go into the garage. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to do my fidget stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'll be cool,
Yeah.
So guys, guys and girls, male, female, we're different. We just have to realize, especially you have to know where your spouse is coming from. That's the important part, right? Because if I don't know what auntie, if I don't know who she is as a person, I'm gonna press all the wrong buttons.
Yep.
And so if you have to know who your spouse is, and I'm assuming, well, it seems like you two know each other, and you know not to push certain buttons. You know what to say to comfort. You leave alone.
And I will say this too. I feel like that is something that I love so much about being married, is that I didn't realize. I mean, people say that you're gonna learn a lot when you get married, and there's a lot of advice that people give you about, being married, and, how it's either really great or it's, really a struggle, or, whatever. I personally feel like I could not be a better person if I was not married, because there's so much that Xue has taught me that I would not have been able to learn on my own if it was just me. And this is not like to push people out there who are single to try to find somebody, or, to advocate to say that marriage is great, but it really is like such a blessing and such a learning opportunity for me, because, Xue's like the greatest teacher for me, because he knows me, right? And because of who he is and like how he's so opposite of me, it gives me a different perspective, and it makes me open up my mind outside of just my own opinions or my own kind of like selfishness, right? And like in our marriage, like I always use the analogy that like I am like the fire and he's like the ice, or like he's the one that's like, a lot more slowed down, and I'm the one that's always like moving so fast, right? And I think for us, it's a good balance in that way, because I'm moving at like 100 miles per hour, having Xue helps me to slow down sometimes and to enjoy the ride. And then like for Xue, because he's so like chilled and so laid back and so like go with the flow of everything, I'm able to come in and provide a little bit more support around.
You're just trying to organize everything in my life.
Okay, well that too, yeah. Like me being able to come in, at the speed and at the pace that I'm at, it helps him to be a little bit more motivated then too, because if it's just him doing things on his own time, things may never get done. But if I'm here to like help motivate him and support him a little bit, he moves forward a little bit more at a different pace than what he was at before. So, we learn to slow down, but we also learn how to move at a speed that's appropriate.
I would agree. I would definitely agree, because if Auntie left it up to me, I wouldn't do anything. House projects, whatever, it's kind of like you have to move along. And you're right. Going back to your point, is that I learned so much from being married to Auntie, because I won't be who I am because of her. Seriously, guys that are listening, or, whoever, like, man, you're getting too soft. You know what? But that's a marriage. It's meeting each other halfway. It's about equal partnership in this marriage. It's not one-sided. Unfortunately, in our culture, a lot of it is one-sided, So I'm hoping that the younger generation, like you guys, will find that there's an equal partnership in a relationship, in a marriage.
Oh, should we talk about that a little bit more?
Sure.
Let's take a minute and talk about that a little bit more too, because I wanna dive into a little bit more about how, not like the Hmong culture, but just like our culture of the society right now is around, and the thoughts around dating and finding a significant other, because there's a lot of different narratives out there and a lot of different things that people are believing about relationships that I feel are really not making it seem like something that is desirable anymore. Like, I feel like a lot of people who are single are either, I mean, actually, I shouldn't say this. I want to talk a little bit more about things that we were talking about last night.
Oh.
I do want to talk more about relationships, marriage in general, because obviously you guys are the first couple, and I want to continue to have this conversation. because I think there's a lot of advices that you guys can share with maybe people that are single or newlyweds, and what their struggles are going to be, and maybe kind of figure those things out, and learn how to communicate. So would you guys come back and do another podcast?
Sure.
All right. Before I let you two go, all right, I'm going to ask a few silly questions.
Okay.
All right. Your favorite drink?
Water.
Coke Zero.
Coke Zero.
I'm basic. I just drink water.
If you have, because I had asked these questions to Sifutu Yang. All right. Any superpower that you can have, which one would it be? Is that a hard one?
Well, I mean, I don't want to give like a cookie cutter answer and be like, I want to be able to teleport or fly or have super strength, but
I'll take teleport.
okay. I don't know. I guess I'll
You
just
don't
say
have
I wish I could fly then.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you this question, which I came up with last night that you
Okay.
didn't use.
Okay.
If you had to go back in time and change one thing about your past, what would that be?
You know what? This is a completely honest answer.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything
Okay.
because everything that has there's a lot of things that I feel like I think I should change, but I'm like if I were to change everything, I would not be who I am today. So I accept everything that has happened in the past. I accepted the way that it was, good or bad, because I either learned from it and grew from it, or I just became a different type of person because of it. So I wouldn't change anything.
One thing I think I would do differently is just take education more seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Favorite actor or actresses?
Tom Hanks for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I don't watch enough movies. I mean, I watch a lot of movies, but
You watch
I don't
movies all
have, I don't have a favorite. I don't know. I can't say. I don't have a favorite.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you two for coming.
All right. Thank you.
We'll do this again.
Yeah.
But we'll do it hopefully, I don't know, when you come back to Milwaukee, or if I come up to St. Paul.
You bring all your stuff with
I'll
you?
bring your stuff, but the thing is, we need a quiet room, though. Do you guys have a quiet room for me?
No.
We just do it at the hotel or something. So.
No, we'll just come back here to Milwaukee to do another part 2 of our podcast with you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this week's podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you.